Nice. So a few things. One, if you know of like any firms or if any firms are looking for consultant software developers, definitely consider us. I can provide my email address. If you know anyone who's looking for a job in software development, especially around full stack, please let me know. I can forward resumes for anyone who's looking for a job. Also, we do a variety of hosting, free hosting, we do not charge. So if you're looking to start up a user group, doesn't have to be a technical user group. Let me know. I can work out hosting, and again, it's free, and we provide everything. Cool. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Again, I'm going to be right in that little conference room. Let me know. I'll give you an email address, and I'll work to make whatever happen. Okay. Cool.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
I'll just give a brief introduction on design thinking innovation. We started this design group about in 2017 or 2015. At that time, there was not many groups. Actually, there was none in Houston that really talked about design thinking. And our group is basically a combination of the three pillars of design thinking: the human desirability, the technological feasibility, and the business viability. And we do events around all these three pillars, and plus more leadership events. If you are junior developer, you want to hone on your skill, you want to become, take up more leadership positions. You will find events that we do. We do annual hackathons as well. So those are some of the events that we do, and reach us for any of the questions and concerns that you have. Back to you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for that, Tanvir. We appreciate it. This has been a really great collaboration effort that our two groups have put together. We put on, I think, is this our fourth event that we've done so far?
Yes.
Since we started this? And I think we've really gotten a lot of good engagement and kind of brought the Houston design community and the UX community kind of together. So be on the lookout for more stuff for that. We're excited to be doing this. A couple more people to thank before we get started. I got to thank the UX Club for coming out and helping us. Even though we didn't wind up with a whole lot to do, we appreciate y'all being here. That's awesome. Thank y'all so much. And then Liz for getting this panel together. I actually did none of the footwork for getting all of these four amazing people together. She sent me an email and said, I've got a panel. You just got to plan the event. I was like, cool, you did the hard part.
Yeah. That was actually pretty easy.
Well, good. So awesome. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and kind of get into it. There's Matt. Okay, awesome. I'm going to start just by kind of introducing our panelists and reading their bios. They have great bios, so I am actually just going to read off of the screen because I don't want to leave anything important out. So forgive me for reading. The first one I'm going to introduce is Matthew Voshell. Matthew is a former network security engineer for U.S. federal government turned ethnographic product designer who's worked for companies like Citibank, Ernst Young, Budweiser, and more. Originally from South Philly and currently based in Seattle, Matthew hosts a Discovering Design podcast and shares his music on SoundCloud and enjoys hiking with his dog Bolt. And he is with us all the way from the West Coast, so it's nice and early for him. So everyone, if you'd like to say hi to Matt.
Hi, everyone. Morning.
I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that. You wrote the bio, so I figure it's probably pretty good.
No, it's good. No, thank you so much for having me here. Excited to talk with everybody and answer any questions you might have. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Our next panelist is Pragya Srivastava. Did I do that right?
Yes.
Awesome. She's one of our awesome in-person panelists here. She's a senior UX designer working in the energy sector here in Houston. She's got a background in architecture and has over 9 years of design experience. She loves her work and takes pride in designing experiences that help people navigate both digital and physical spaces. You see how I put those two words together? When she's not designing, she mentors through ADPlist.org, helps organize awesome events with IXDA and Friends of Figma. And she likes hanging out with her dog and enjoys tending to her plants. Probably, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
No, that was it. Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Back online, we have Akhil Modali. He's a San Jose State grad with degrees in psychology and human factors. He's got a ton of UXR experience in everything from e-commerce to financial technology. He's co-chair of the International Game Developers Association in San Francisco, and is an active mentor who seeks to anyone who wants to seek his guidance. In his free time, he enjoys reading comics, catching up on anime. He likes rooting for the Ravens and the Lakers. Akhil, I gotta ask you, that's a pretty big spread, man. How'd you get those two teams?
So I grew up playing basketball in Philly. So anyone who grows up in Philly, Kobe is like your role model if you hoop. So Kobe for sure. And then so really it's Lakers by product of Kobe. Since he didn't play for any other teams. And then the Ravens, I was born at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. So it's literally right next to the Ravens Stadium. So my dad grew up rooting for the Ravens. So like same thing.
Awesome, cool. That's really interesting to hear. Philly, man, that's a crazy place.
The best place.
Oh, I forgot you had Philly connections too.
Yeah, it is the best place. What you talking about, Holmes?
Yeah.
All right, and last but certainly not least, we have Kinza Muzahir. She's our other in-person panelist. She's a producer, strategist, and writer for gaming, public media, and commercial spaces. She's currently a strategist for the UX team at Brand Extract and also is a member of the Asian American Documentary Network. She uses the principles of the media technologies, audience research, and narrative frameworks to shape accessible cross-platform interactive experiences. Her portfolio includes partnerships with Crocs, Houston, Public Media, Aurora Picture Show, and Public Poetry, amongst others. That is a lot. Her approach is rooted in artistic and sociological appreciation of the depth and wonder of the human condition. Third, she explores how geographies shape people and consequently communities. Ever a poet, her design lens is influenced by storytelling to create multifaceted experiences through literary and visual devices. I'm blind, I'm sorry, it's a small phone. I'll get the bigger one next time. Kinza can often be found illustrating or recording in her studio during the day and performing at open mics at night. And I brought a PA system so you can perform afterwards if you want to. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Not at all. This is very nice. Thank you so much for having me. This is very exciting.
Absolutely. Awesome. So I think that's everyone. We had a couple more people trickle in. Just so y'all know, there is coffee at the front if you do decide you want some. And with everyone being introduced, I think we're probably pretty good to go. Is everyone ready? Yeah. Okay, cool. So as many of y'all saw, that we did have a forum open that we were able to submit some questions to beforehand. So we could kind of, get some of the low hanging fruit that everyone was asking and just kind of collaborate those all together. So I took those questions and kind of amalgamated them into their own kind of thing. So we're going to start with those. And if you have any questions afterwards, we are going to have an kind of open mic Q&A if you have any questions that we don't address during this part. Okay. So the first question, and this is just kind of a general question of the panel. I think Matt will probably start with you on this one and then just kind of pass it around for everyone's thoughts on it. But one thing that we saw a lot on our forum when people were asking questions, they wanted to know, what are some tools or platforms that can help us find an entry-level position or internship outside of the usual LinkedIn and Indeed? And are there some that you think are better than others?
Oh, that's a good one. Tools or platform. Wow. Okay. All right. So really, you're just asking about job sites, I guess, right? I would say two come off the top of my head that I personally had success with. The first is Well Found Talent, which used to be called AngelList Talent. So basically, that's a platform that startups will typically. There are some bigger companies that'll post on there as well, but for the most part, it's funded startups that will post onto there. And I've gotten several roles through there. It's a lot, and it's also a lot easier. It's not like an ATS system. They literally you set up your profile on there, and then you could just put like a little note to the hiring manager. It's not like Workday where you have to like give your third born just to submit your resume. And then particularly for early, I think I'm gonna mess this up. I'm pretty sure it's earlystagedesignjobs.com. Like that's the whole thing. Early stage design jobs. They're specifically like entry level and internship opportunities, right? And then lastly, actually, one of them I thought of, if you attended a university of any kind, I know University of Houston is right there, right, and stuff. They'll usually have career services, and then a lot of schools will have like student only job boards where employers will send jobs to that, but they're only available to students, so they know that you're looking at it. So if you attended in the past a university, I know you can reach back out as an alumni too, but that's usually also a good resource for jobs that are focused on. Some of them might be at your entry level style. So I think those are the three that work for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt, for that. Phil, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I have a little bit of an adverse response to this. So you said outside of LinkedIn, and I actually think LinkedIn's a really good platform to get a job, but instead you need to approach it a little different. So I'm not saying to post like your Instagram feed on LinkedIn, but I really do think that one of the big things that's helped me in my career is having a presence on LinkedIn. So whether that means like just reposting people's content, like adding a small comment here, adding a small comment there, what usually ends up happening is people will end up seeing your name just like constantly pop up. And I've had a numerous number of interviews where someone said, "Oh, I've seen your post on LinkedIn, or I've seen you like this person's content. How do you know them?" So I think that's a really good way. So kind of getting active on the platform because it's just another chance for you to get yourself in eyes of people more. I think that's really good, and I think also another really good resource. Matt kind of stole mine. I love Early Design Career, the website. Early Design, I can never say it. It's a mouthful, but it's like early stage design jobs. They're really fast at getting back to you. When I submitted things, I'm not a designer, by the way. I'm primarily a researcher. I can do design, but like low wireframing stuff. But yeah, they usually get back really fast. And I also do recommend checking out for all the students or the early, like the people who just graduated, checking out like your local government like organizations, like your local. So like within the county you live in, because they often have design work that they need done. So like just messaging someone quickly about if they have the design work, it's a really easy way to get some actual real world experience. Also doing something that's like really tactile in your portfolio. Yeah, so those are my two.
Awesome, so much. Thank you for that. And Kinza, Pragya, anything to add to this?
I think, for me, has anyone heard of Otta at all? That one has been very good as well. There's also built-in. So I think those two, and there's also startup jobs actually. So a couple of these are different. A lot of these you'll find that they'll have the same jobs posted, but I guess like the only difference is if you apply through them, it's sometimes you might get a faster response, or someone who's specifically looking from that platform will really get back to you. But Otta is really good in terms of some very specific jobs and the ones that are vetted essentially. But I will second what Akhil said. LinkedIn is a really, really good platform for jobs. I would never underestimate it. You can connect with people on there because you'll already find hiring managers from the companies, and then you can reach out to them potentially, try to have a conversation if you have any questions. And then your entire profile is over there. So, you know, it's helpful, and you can have job alerts going for multiple keywords. And the best part about this is as soon as you get a job alert, you can see when a job is posted. It's always beneficial to apply to a job as soon as it was posted. So personally, when I got my job in UX, the first one, that was through that. But actually any of the interviews that I scored, to be honest, a lot of those were because I would apply immediately. So like 24 hours or like a couple of days. If it's over a week, I wouldn't even bother applying, but it doesn't hurt to apply. But the strategy for that was apply as soon as you can, and you might be one of the first people to make it into their bank. So that's helpful. So I wouldn't underestimate it as well.
What was the first website you said, Otter or something?
OTTA.
Oh, okay. Oh, Otter.
Got it. Pragya, anything?
Yes, some pretty amazing resources there. I do really like otta.com. How it starts is you can build your profile, you can filter out the years of experience you have, what kind of startups are you looking for, what size of startups are you looking for, and it will start suggesting you jobs based on that filter. So it's a lot more customized than many other job websites out there. I would definitely second on, relying on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, personally, at least for me, has been a great resource. Just piggybacking on what Kinza said, applying as soon as you can when you see a job, utilizing those keywords. Keywords in terms of your maybe senior UX designer, junior UX designer, even companies, UX designer at Amazon. You can filter out and you will start getting notifications. Second is, rather than, I would see before applying, do you have somebody in your connection who can refer you to that job? Because how it works is, as a hiring manager, recruiter, or anybody, the applicant pool, they give you more preference if it comes from a reference. So if you do have a reference, try to connect to that person, your first connection, second connection, and then apply. That is highly suggested. If not, apply as soon as you can. Again, what Akhil suggested is just staying active on LinkedIn. If you stay active, you start getting more traction from recruiters. A lot of my interviews I got was from recruiters reaching out to me than me applying. I did get a few calls, but that leads to better conversion in terms of getting interviews. So yeah, staying out there. And early stage design careers, again, great resource. Reaching out to startups, if you're into startups, smaller startups, pre-seed, or people with 10 to 15 employees, reaching out to them directly on LinkedIn and saying that these are your strengths and you're looking for a job. Telling your network that you're looking for a job and these are your strengths can get you some interviews. Another great resource I would say is being actively involved in the UX communities. There are Slack channels, there are Discord channels. People do put out jobs there. So, sending messages on Slack and Discord communities could be helpful.
Awesome, thank you so much. And that's really interesting that y'all both touched on keywords, because that actually does lead into our next question. UX is such a wide and varied field, and it's gone by many different names over the whole course of since Don Norman invented it in the 80s. So speaking on keywords, what are some other keywords that we can make sure that we're putting in to these platforms where we're looking for jobs that you've seen UX related jobs kind of be associated with?
So I can go first, and I would say as designers or as job applicants, and even I've been there when I'm looking for a job, we tend to forget the soft skills. We do put a lot of UX, we put UX design, wireframing, prototyping, but we forget the soft skills, and soft skills are equally important. I would say a 50% part of my current job is collaboration, teamwork, meetings, stakeholder management. So those kind of keywords also do help.
100% agree. Collaboration is such a big part of our discipline. You will never work in a silo. And anyone who is hiring will be looking for those soft skills. They will want to see how you contributed to a team. They will want to see how you work with other people and other different disciplines at the same time. So even if I were to think of how we work right now, it's you go from strategy to design to prototyping, and it's information architecture. You have to work with developers a little bit differently. It's across the board. And those soft skills will take you far, and they will help you differentiate your resume and your profile and your story.
Awesome, thank you so much. Akhil, I do have a special way to put this towards you, since you're more on the research side. What are some different keywords that you use when you're looking for jobs that kind of find you a role that you're more looking for?
So I think when it comes to research, and I'm sure even the designers can vouch for this, if you're looking, so let's take it from, if anybody knows what the funnel theory is, right? Let's take it from like really wide to really narrow. So if you're looking for really wide, you're going to use some of the more generic terms. So you're going to use more popular design terms and research terms like heuristics, qualitative, quantitative, like very like high level. But let's say you want to work in something really specific. So let's say you only want to work in e-commerce, and you know that in e-commerce they use a lot of qualitative and quantitative like data, then you're going to start getting really specific with keywords in your job search. That's how I'm taking this question, by the way. If I'm not taking this question correctly, someone correct me. But it would be, I don't know, for example, if you're looking at e-com, you would say like you would put DTC, which means like direct to consumer. You would put persona development. You would put remote usability testing. Like get really specific with the terminology that you're putting on your like resume or your job search, and like make sure that you understand put those industry terms for that specific industry you're working in. Because for researchers, we often do work siloed. We work siloed in the sense that like you're doing research, but I agree with everyone. You're doing a lot of collaboration work. So understanding the business that you're working in for researchers is just as important as understanding the actual practice of UX. So making sure that you understand whatever business you're applying to, those keywords will be really important. So that's like my take though.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Matt, anything to add?
No, could you ask, is this like search terms when you're searching for a job, you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Just, some kind of non-generic other search terms that you might use to find that first entry level role or that first internship in a UX related field.
Nah, man, if you're trying to break in, you'll take anything you can get. So I don't know that well, let me say this. If you're pivoting, because this is kind of the point, right? If you're pivoting from a prior career in a particular discipline or industry, right? So mine was cybersecurity. You have a leg up on anyone else applying for a job that if you're applying for a company that's in that same field, right? But you're pivoting to design. Usually if you go back and apply to companies that are in that same industry, you'll have a leg up. But as far as trying to get into break in, no, there was no specific keywords I searched for other than, location or really, I keep calling it AngelList, well-found talent, such a dumb name. They actually let you exclude keywords. So, which is the inverse of that. So I actually exclude, like, I'm not working at any crypto places. Like I'm not getting involved with cryptography in any way. So I avoid like those kinds of things personally myself, but that's just how I roll.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. That's really cool. I really like the excluding keywords. That's really cool. I'm going to go do that as soon as we get home.
Yeah, it's super helpful.
That's really cool. All right. So moving on to the next question. I think this one's really interesting for a lot of us. And Kinza, just because I know more about where you came from, because we went to the same school, I'm going to start with you first. What is the best way to gain UX experience if you do not work in UX and are trying to transition into the field and you don't have a UX degree plan?
So this is more towards transitioning from one career to the other? Or?
It's breaking into the career if you have zero UX experience to showcase.
The best way, I think, that you can okay, here's the thing. I know it's like a catch-22 thing where like you need to have X years of experience to do something, but what they're really looking for is how you can show what other areas that you might have worked in that are maybe similar to it or adjacent to it. So maybe you haven't worked specifically in a UX research role, or you haven't done any usability, but have you worked on a website before? Have you worked on a brand before? Have you done any of those things that help you identify what a user might need or look for that you are now trying to garner and create in an experience? Those are all the things that are transferable that you can maybe showcase in your portfolio. But the real thing that you would need is to be able to talk about them and talk about your process. I think that is really the key when you end up getting that interview on like how you're going to talk about how you came to a decision. What was your process like? So I'll give you an example. One of my first jobs out of college was in marketing. It's another story on how I got there, but I knew where I wanted to go. And so while I was in that job, I was looking for opportunities. And while I worked on social media and while I worked on print for them, a lot of these different areas, a lot of different disciplines played into it. Once I had finished working for that company, the way I approached my future opportunities was that what did I do? Excuse me, what did I do in that job that I could now say, okay, this is a transferable skill to it. So while I was in that marketing job, I had worked on their website. I had them transition from WordPress to another platform and kind of just seen that whole process through, and it was a lot of work. And all of the different pieces kind of put that together. So while I didn't have specific quote unquote UX research experience, my job at the next stage ended up being in UX strategy, because there was a lot that I could use from my years of experience prior, from different disciplines that I could use in this. So it's not specific to, I wouldn't discount any experience that you have, truthful. There's always something that you can extract from it and then take to your next job. There's always something to learn. And if you're specifically building portfolio in interactive experiences, I will look for opportunities, and I understand sometimes they can be very low pay or even no pay. Sometimes it has to be volunteer work, and I did a lot of volunteer work. Sometimes you just have to pitch ideas, maybe just small businesses even. Or you have to collaborate with people you're studying with. Just create a prototype, think of an idea. Some of these things might seem like the most basic that everyone is doing, but these will help shape your first few pieces in your portfolio. And the way that you talk about them in your process, that's what will help get your first interviews and how those interviews then transition into actual opportunities.
Absolutely, I could not agree more. Do not discount for any experience, any transferable experience that you've had. Another thing I would think about is, now that you're looking for a job, UX-related job, be it UX research, UX design, product design, there are just so many terminologies out there. So our industry or design field keeps getting broader as you keep getting deeper inside it. But now that you realize the kind of job you want, look at the job descriptions. Try to understand what skills you have, what skills you do not have and you need to work on. For example, let's say you come from a boot camp, or you come from a design degree, or from any background at all. Maybe you do not have an experience of collaborating with developers. Maybe you do not have an experience of stakeholder management, or maybe you do not understand business. Maybe you have an experience of collaborating with developers, but do not understand the business side of things. So just understanding those gaps in your current skill set, try to leverage that. And again, like Kinza said, pro bono work or just charging flat fee, trying to do freelance work and getting some real life experience can help you stand out and build those strong portfolios. I really suggest having quality portfolio pieces rather than quantity. I know that I have gotten interviews, even sharing, I do not recommend that 100%, but I have shared just one portfolio piece and I have received an interview. Now that's not the best way to go about it, but let's say you have a dream job or somebody asking you for a portfolio piece right there because they have a requirement. We do tend to be a little more modest about our skill set and we're like, maybe our portfolio is not ready. But you never know until you share your portfolio piece, even if you have just one. So work on quality portfolio pieces and start applying. Also, and I don't know if I'm just moving off topic, UXify your job search. That is something that has helped me a lot. Understanding the market, understanding who your users are. They are hiring managers, they are recruiters. What are they looking for? How much time do they have? What kind of skill set? And just, prioritizing your elevator pitch, those keywords that we just spoke about, that skill set, right on top, on your LinkedIn, on your resume, on your portfolio, and even when you're talking to those people. So concentrate more on your strengths than on your weaknesses is something I think. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much. Guys online, y'all got anything to add?
You asked the question again really quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were talking about ways to build experience in UX that you can showcase when you don't currently work in UX and aren't in a UX related degree.
Yeah. So per my another one, the shameless plug, 4th season of my podcast called Discovering Design, where I talk specifically to researchers and designers that have pivoted from non-technical backgrounds into tech. heard a lot of interesting things around that. First and foremost, an internship, like getting some sort of internship. Again, if you're an active student or recent student, there's a lot of companies out there, they're specifically hiring for interns, so you don't even have to have any real experience or work. But to create some sort of content for your portfolio, first and foremost, just look around you. There's no shortage of problems, right? So take a weekend, go through. It could be hand drawings, it could be something in Figma. It doesn't really need to be. It's more like explaining how you think and how you're curious and how you build empathy and these kinds of things, and just throw that on a site. And I think some people will be interested to see that part of how your brain works. Through to you're in Texas, so I'm sure there's no shortage of religious organizations that are nonprofit organizations that are all around. You can always approach them. They're always looking for help, and they have no money to do it, so you can offer your services for free. But just say, hey, I want to be able to put this work on my portfolio. That's usually one as well that I've heard some of the guests that I've had on also do. And bands. That was the other thing. I forgot about that. Bands always need like websites, graphic posters, all that kind of stuff. So if you have any friends that are in bands or are musicians, ask them if they need any help with sites, and you can put that together for them as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Akhil, you got anything to add?
Yeah, so piggybacking off of what Matt said, something else that's really helpful is outside of bands and stuff like that, is really just looking for people that need UX work. I think that's super helpful. So keep your eyes out on like LinkedIn for people who are starting new companies, who are running startups and things of that nature. It really helps just to do that. And I think the other thing too is whether you're a career pivot or if you're like fresh out of college or you just started like figuring out like, yo, UX is the thing I want to do kind of situation. I think another really helpful tip that I found really helpful early on in my job search is someone mentioned about getting like those skills that aren't necessary, that are super transferable to UX, and they aren't just UX specific skills. I think any experience is a good experience because at the end of the day, UX is really about the user. It's about the human experience. So any experience you can get with handling people in some manner, whether that's working in customer service, whether that's working in like a quality control setting, whether that's working with kids. I have a lot of friends who are UXRs that transitioned from the education background because handling participants through an experiment with care and a certain curiosity is kind of like being a teacher in some regards. So really making sure that regardless of the experience that you have outside of it, that you're tailoring that experience to make sure that it shows how good of a candidate you are to be a really good UX designer, a really good UX researcher. So yeah, those things I think are really important. Just like making sure that you highlight those skills that you may have outside of that, because I think every skill is transferable to our field. So yeah, but piggybacking off of Matt's, yeah, looking for people who just need UX work is kind of the best way to do it because they don't have either they don't have the budget or they don't have the time to do it themselves. So if you can take something off of someone else's plate and do it for them at a really high level, then sky's the limit.
Yeah, that's super awesome. And I know for sure, I had never thought about running tests being kind of like being in a classroom. So next time I do a focus group, I'm definitely going 1, 2, 3 eyes on me. We're going to treat it like an elementary school room. So this next one's pretty fun, and I'm interested to hear what y'all have to say about it. Talking about boot camps, hackathons, and certifications. Do they make a difference? Are they worth spending the time to get? Are there any that are better than others? Pragya, let's go ahead and start with you, and then we'll move to Kinza, then Akhil, and then Matt.
So I just want to understand the question again.
Yeah.
Bootcamp, certifications, hackathons.
Yeah.
Any experience, like we just spoke, any experience counts. I have had a bootcamp experience. I've done a hackathon, more likely a designathon, and each of those turned out to be paid portfolio business. Now, how I would not say bootcamp in itself is sufficient, but having the mindset, bootcamp gives, if you don't have a design background, right, bootcamp gives you that fundamentals and fundamentals of design, visual design. There's just so much. It gives you a foot in the door, I would say, of understanding, but you still have to go get that, maybe some real experience or understand do that collaboration. I don't know. There are different kinds of boot camps. I did Springboard. It was a good experience in terms of, because I had a very good mentor. So a boot camp, okay, two things. Boot camp is not, can give you a very good portfolio piece. It can give you a good way for mentor, get you a very good mentor. But second, it's not the only way. I have seen people without any boot camp, without any hackathon, they've done Google Coursera and they have landed jobs. Just understanding, do you learn better in a structured guidance way? Do you have that much time to spend? Boot camp can take you 6 to 9 months, maybe an year. And do you want to, are you currently in a full-time role? That can give you a little bit of flexibility than doing a master's maybe, if you're looking for a boot camp approach. Those are some things. But yeah, I would say I would not discount for any experience, be it design-a-thon, boot camp, masters. They all have their own advantages. They all have their own limitations. But just understanding what the limitations and advantages is, what your current goals are, how much of a time frame are you ready to give? Maybe you're looking for a transition in 3 years, maybe you're looking for a transition in 1 year if you already come from a design background. Just understanding what phase you are in, how much of a budget you have, how much of a time frame you have, what constraints do you have, would help you answer these questions.
Yeah, definitely. I would think they can definitely get you some really good portfolio pieces. A, B, they can help you understand how to, again, work in teams because you're collaborating in an environment. So it'll give you that, it'll mimic that structure that you might find in an actual work environment, which is really good for your experience. And the other thing that is sometimes overlooked is that sometimes it just helps you get to know other people who are maybe working in the industry, or their peers that are at the same level as you. And you can just, it's so beneficial to just have those conversations with people around you. Just the fact that you guys are here today, right now, just look around you in your room. These are all people who are in the same kind of, we all have the same goals. And it's always nice to talk to each other and learn from each other, because this is where you will have those conversations that might just give you those nuggets of information that you were looking for. Maybe someone has an opportunity, and sometimes it's not about the opportunity, it's just about learning more about the discipline. Something that I've struggled with is just being a little bit paralyzed by not knowing what you don't know. And these are great environments in poking around and just being curious and really understanding what the discipline holds, what each person's role might be in a project, and what you really like to do and maybe what you even don't like. Sometimes just being a Swiss Army knife can help you understand, okay, I don't want to do this at all in my career in this discipline. And that can help you narrow down your search.
Awesome, thank you so much. Akhil?
Yeah, and this question, if I could get it repeated or get reminded again, it's about like your philosophy behind boot camps and things of that nature. Yes.
Yeah, so boot camps, hackathons, if you know of any certifications that you find exceptionally helpful breaking into the field, anything like that.
Okay, so this is a very hot button issue. Everybody's got a different belief about it, but I don't think personally, as someone who's like, I come from like lower socioeconomic background, I chose to invest my time, money, resources, and effort in a higher education degree because I believe there was more return on that. But on the flip side, I think the boot camp's really good to get your experience accelerated, but sometimes it doesn't work for great experience. So you really want to think about when you're making these decisions about, maybe I want to do a boot camp, maybe I want to get a higher education degree, maybe I want to do X, Y, and Z to accelerate my career. You really want to think about that time cost trade-off, and you want to do your own like personal research. For me, I understood that a boot camp wasn't going to really do it for me. I had kind of a yearn and a excitement to go pursue further education. So that was like my background. That was like what I wanted to do. But I'm sure for others, a boot camp might work. On the flip side, I think that hackathons and like sponsored events are a great way to get experience because someone mentioned like being a Swiss Army knife. And hackathons and things where you have to work in teams, you have to understand everybody's role. Like you have to understand it. And that's like one of the key skills as a researcher is understanding the role that everybody plays on a product team or really on a team that you're working on. Understanding X, Y, and Z of everyone else's job to make sure that everything goes smoothly is great. So I don't know if I'm for or against boot camps, but I am for anything that is free or relatively low cost that gives you a really wide value return. Because that's just like the way I operate. So, but anything that's like cheap to your standards and gives you a really high yield of return, I think is super valuable. Is there anything else I want to think I should add that's like, that's really great? Oh, I think another really great thing is attending, like for education purposes, attending often a lot of schools do this. I went to San Jose State, and San Jose State often does this where sometimes they'll open up guest speakers that they have to alumni. And if you're an alumni of a certain university and you see someone really cool who has a really cool job in the UX field, coming to speak at your former institution, they usually like open it up and allow you to go back and check it out. So I think that's also really good. But yeah, when it comes to boot camps and things like that, I think it's a personal choice, and you have to make the best decision for your emotional, physical, financial, spiritual needs. So yeah, and then I guess Matt, you want to go next?
Am I going next?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just making sure. I know if you're posting. Yeah, it's certainly a divisive topic. Okay, so I have two angles from this. One is from my time leading design at EY and kind of having to hire people who came out of boot camps. I personally like. First, let me make back. Each person learns differently. You know how you learn, right? Everybody learns completely different ways, retains information different ways, goes at different speeds, right? So not everyone's the same. So let me throw that caveat out there. But I found that when I interviewed or interacted with people who came from boot camps, they tended to be a bit cookie cutter. There wasn't really much like focus on empathy and innovation. It was more about just like, oh, I just want to prove that I can regurgitate what design thinking is. Like, you become more of a robot versus actually learning something, right? Second of all, those things are crazy expensive, and there's not some will offer some sort of like payment thing. I've heard there's a thing where some boot camps where if you don't get a job in the first 2 months after you graduate, you don't have to pay your tuition. So looking into ones that offer that might be something that's good for you, or something you might be interested in. That said, flipping to the 40 plus people that I've interviewed down on Discovering Design, it's kind of been all over the place. There used to be a group called Tradecraft that got some good reviews in the San Francisco Bay Area. I don't think they're around anymore. There's obviously the Google certification that's out there that's quite popular. At this point, it's gotten a bit dirty's not the right word, like icky, in that like a lot of these groups are simply just putting on training because they know that UX is a hot industry and people are trying to get into it, and so they'll just take your money gladly but not actually prepare you for the job. So plenty of people I interviewed with did not go to boot camp. They either did more of a traditional, like, which is what I did. I'm the son of a public school teacher, so I went to University of California, San Diego's extension. It's a 1-year program. It's like a mini master's sort of on top of my undergraduate. I felt like that was good for me. Personally for me, and plus I wanted to, if I'm going to pay money, it's going to go to a state school, and it's usually a lot cheaper, way cheaper than any of the private institutions like GA or Springboard. But they also don't really prepare you super great. Like the things that they focus on aren't going to give you a good insight into the experience of what it means to be a UX designer. You also won't get exposure to like working with engineers and people like that because they're not in that boot camp with you. And so if all else fails, my advice is to just throw some stuff, prove your passion, prove your empathy through your portfolio, and go get an internship, because that 3-month internship you'll get, hopefully it's paid, will garner way more experience and much more lifelong learning lessons than, going in any kind of boot camp. Because, that was the last thing. And then those who can't teach is a saying that I say a lot, or that I have in the back of my head. So yes, you're getting what is textbook information, but it isn't usually necessarily reflective of how the job is in the real world. So you kind of come out being all jumbled and having to work with someone like myself to try to unbrainwash you a bit to focus on what really matters for the job.
Awesome. Thank you
That's
so
my
much.
opinion.
Yeah, that's really super interesting and valuable. I gotta say, Akhil, my favorite price to pay is free, 50 free. So I agree with you on that.
I would just like to add another free resource, as Akhil mentioned, IBM Design Thinking certification that is free and it has multiple levels. That is something you could look into.
Awesome. That's really good. All right, cool. So our next one, we kind of get pivot topics a little bit. This was kind of about knowledge base. You know, a lot of the job applications and job postings that we see in the field are UI UX designer, UI UX researcher. How important is it for your knowledge to be balanced between UI and UX, or is one more important than the other in order to actually get into the field? And I guess we'll start.
I was gonna say, can I answer that really quick?
Yeah, let's start.
Okay, so first,
start Matt Akhil, then Kinza Pragya.
oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just talking about this the other day. Like, first and foremost, they're not the same thing. Okay, UI is part of UX, and UX is the discipline. UI is a noun, user interface. Like, this is a user. That's a noun. Visual design is the competency. Like, you are a visual designer, right? So let me and if anybody wants to in the class or something, you can look it up. There is this really dope Venn diagram, like on steroids, that shows like UX design, and then it shows all the other competencies inside of them. So first and foremost, that to whether or not one is better than the other, it depends on what you want to do, right? If you have a graphic design background, you're likely going to slot over to visual design much easier than say user research. If you have a psychology degree, you're going to be really great at user research and probably not that strong on visual design. Is it okay to not be great at either or? Yeah, it all really depends on what is the job you're going, or what is the role you're going after, right? What is going to give you the most fulfillment, and then kind of follow on that path. You can also look up people on LinkedIn who have roles that you would like to have, and then look at what is their education, what are the areas that they focus on, and start to mimic that a bit as far as, like, you know, projects they work on and stuff. But I wouldn't say that you have to do one or the other. That it all really depends on what are the needs of the role and what do you really get, you know, fulfillment out of personally.
Thank you, Matt. Oh my God. Thank you so much. That is one of my biggest pet peeves in my career is when people say UI, UX. It is, they could not, yes. Are they cousins? Absolutely they're cousins. They're still in a family tree. But are they the exact person? Are they twins? No, absolutely not. So yeah, thank you, Matt, for clarifying that. I think that I'm piggybacking off of what Matt said, because Matt's always throwing me real good alley oops, is that it is really up to you to depend on what you want to do. I highly recommend listening, whether it's to Matt's podcast or whether it's to podcasts or to resources, as whether it's like reaching out to an old professor, reaching out to an alumni of your school, whether it's like reaching out to different groups and just kind of talking to people and see what their day-to-day looks like, or reading articles on Medium or other blogs, or LinkedIn content that shows what the difference between the two careers are. And then you need to do that skills assessment, that skill evaluation that Matt brought up, where it's, okay, let's say you are, I'll use the reverse. Let's say that you're an anthropology major and you miss doing ethnographic research, then you might find yourself catered more to being a UX researcher than, let's say, a product designer. But let's say you have a background in industrial design, then your skills might fit over there. But let's say it's completely out of left field. Let's say that it's marketing, but instead of marketing in terms of marketing analytics, then you might find a higher return and, you know, more research based, because you like looking at numbers and like analyzing different user groups and different personas. So really it's about finding your skills and the things you're interested in, and then figuring out which role works best for you. Yeah. So just I'm just doing like a windmill off the alley-oop that Matt threw.
Awesome. Coming back in with the basketball references. And Kinza, Pragya, anything to add to that?
Go ahead. Okay. Really couldn't agree more with what both of them said. It's not the same term. they're not conjoined twins. It's not, one of the biggest pet peeves I think of everyone who's in the industry is if anyone saying UX UI. And again, it's, yeah, what Matt and Akhil said, it's really about what you want to do, and sometimes you don't know what you want. So if that's the case, then I would highly suggest just experiment, do both. See if you don't like one over the other, something like that. And your portfolio pieces after a while will start showing you, you know, what you are more interested in doing or what you're not interested in doing. And another thing is just that sometimes being a generalist when you're starting off is not a bad thing. Because it just gives you more context on what the industry requires. And it gets to a point where you have to know yourself in order to identify your own goals. But at the same time, just having knowledge of the other discipline is not a bad thing. So being well versed in both in design and research will just help you be more informed in making future decisions, especially if you want to transition into leadership roles. And I think that is, those are just resources to have in your back pocket. And if it's not experience, it's knowledge, and it's foundational. And that's gonna help you go from one rung to the next in your ladder in your career.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, UX, the term UI UX designer is definitely a pet peeve for all of us out there. They are completely different. They are codependent, but also different. And I would not like to repeat what they've already said, but I can tell you from my experience, one of the biggest challenges personally, if I get asked in an interview or if somebody asks me, what do you enjoy doing the most? I still do not have an answer to it because I consider myself a UX generalist. And it's like Kinza mentioned, it's okay to be a UX generalist. I do have a preference in some of the projects. I do enjoy research more. Or there are phases, again, I have multiple years of design experience. There are phases where I like doing the UI part more than I like doing the research. But it keeps changing, and just having an overall skill set, you might still be, better at research than design. You might be better at UI than research. But still, initially starting out, it definitely does not hurt to have a little bit of everything. That's been my personal experience again. Especially if you want to work for a startup, if you want to work for a mid-scale company or companies that are just, in the middle line of the UX maturity. I hope you don't work for companies which is very low on UX maturity, because that could be very troublesome, especially if you're a solo UX designer there. But yes, having a little bit of everything, at least an understanding as somebody who's trying to get into UX design, with my personal experience, it has helped me.
Can I just add, run from the job descriptions that ask for a UX or UX UI rock star?
Absolutely.
Just run.
So awesome. That's fun.
Unicorns.
Unicorns.
Someone says unicorn and I'm running, or if the job posting says UX UI, I am running the opposite direction.
I've been seeing designer developer a lot more lately too.
Oh, yeah.
They want you to they literally want to hire one person to do the job of what typically would take 4 people. Yeah, it's not appropriate. P.S. I posted, I know y'all are in the room. I don't know if you want to open this on there, but in the Zoom chat, I posted the image for the Venn diagram that shows all the disciplines around UX, and then per, I think it was Kinza, I forget who mentioned there, the UX stages of maturity of, like looking at the maturity level of a company and evaluating where they are and then setting your expectations currently. That accurately. That's definitely a thing as well.
Honestly, getting a job is equal parts of you finding your perfect fit and the employer finding their perfect fit. So at any point that you find yourself, okay, I just need a job and I need to do this, that's one thing. It's understandable sometimes when you just have to take a job. But at a certain point in your career, you're gonna have to make that decision where you're like, okay, this is just not a good fit for me. And in your interviews, do not ever be afraid to voice what you actually believe in and what you actually want to do. So if you're vetting an employer, always make sure, like they said, maturity, like how much do they know your discipline? Is someone going to be a mentor there for you? Is your supervisor going to know enough about your discipline to really help support you? Or is this going to be you kind of just trying to flow and trying not to drown in something? So it's important to vet them as much as they're vetting you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure thing.
So the funny thing about this is I actually ended up in the position that you guys are advising against. So being a unicorn, I have about 3 clients at an IT company that I work for. I did their website. I'm doing website for a nonprofit, and I'm doing website for a corporate housing company, all through Webflow. I've done the entire UI UX process, but I don't want to work there anymore because it's overwhelming. I cry when I get home from work. I'm just like, I'm tired. I just want to do one thing. So
Can someone please give her a hug for us, please?
Yeah, please.
We feel your pain. Trust me, you're not alone.
100%.
And like, I'm sorry, but let me just finish my sentence. So, I'm scared, I guess, would be the word. Everyone says to post on LinkedIn, but I'm like, oh my God, like, I have to be this perfect person on LinkedIn and all this other stuff. So like, how would you guys recommend for me to get out of this situation?
I guess I can start. So first, I completely empathize with where you're at, really early in my career. I won't say the company's name, but because it's a huge company, you can go, if anyone wants to play a fun game and think about the company I'm talking about, you can go stalk my LinkedIn and go look at it. But a company I was at really early in my career. Actually, I may not have it even posted on my LinkedIn, but anywho, I was in roughly the same position, and something that really helped me get out of the situation is you mentioned how like you look on LinkedIn and like kind of see that everything is perfect, but something that always helps me with my job search is that I remember that people only post the highlights. It's like, sorry, I use a lot of sports references, so if they don't follow, I'm so sorry. But like when you look at the highlights from a game, or you look at the highlights from something, right? They only post the really cool plays. They only post the touchdowns. They only post like someone getting dunked on, or they only post like someone hitting a home run. They don't post the times that the person goes up to bat and doesn't hit the ball at all, right? So it's about remembering that you're not alone in the situation and that there's a lot of people that have been through it. So that's like the first thing. And then 2, if you are feeling as and someone feel free to cut me off, but like I don't know how to say this, but like if you are feeling like overwhelmed and overworked, it's completely okay to go to your employer and say, hey, I am doing way too much right now. Can you cut down my responsibility? Like, can you cut down my responsibility? And most of the time, if an employer like wants to keep you around, they'll cut down your responsibility around like a lot, because it's in this job market, especially, it's really hard to find really good talent because there's so much talent available because of all the layoffs, because of X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z. So once you have really good talent in house, it's really hard to retain that really good talent. So I would recommend like slowly asking, hey, I have a lot on my plate right now. Is there any way we could split this meal in half? Like I'll keep the baked mac and cheese and a cornbread. You can take like the broccoli and I don't know, something else. But Matt, I feel like you want to add something.
No, I just didn't know how we got to food from this point.
Sorry,
I haven't had breakfast yet.
analogies, brother.
It's too early here.
Analogies.
No, the Kinza probably can go next.
I just want to say another way you can frame that conversation with your employer is prioritization. What do you work on first? What is it that, and always keep them in the loop on what you are currently working on. Because sometimes it's just a matter of things piling up and people having short attention spans and not knowing what else they gave you to do. And just having those constant check-ins and one-on-ones, they can be helpful. So having that confidence, and I know it's different for every employer. Sometimes you can't have those conversations depending on your relationship with them, but it's important to have them at some point. So if you are drowning, it is important to reach your hand out and just say, hey, I have X, Y, and Z things due and they're all due this week. Can I prioritize one way or another? Or can we get another resource to help out with this? Because it's just too much for me to handle right now.
Absolutely, Akhil. Been there, done that. context switching is very, very hard, even if it's between two different products, right? Doing two different things. Like Akhil said, my initial years, I had a startup, I had my own design agency, and I started with just two designers, scaled it. I was doing architecture, I was doing interior design, I was designing websites, I was doing research, I was marketing my firm, I was doing branding, I was doing all sorts of things. And I enjoyed that initially. I was at that age, I had that energy, but I started burning out very, very fast. So some exercise that helps me personally, I'm a person who likes to learn, who likes to dip my toes in multiple things, yes, but as I'm growing experience, I take a step back. Either it could be with just myself doing an exercise. You must have heard of impact effort prioritization. We do this for the products we are working on, but we don't do this with our own life, right? What are the products or the employees or the strengths or skills that you want to work on, continue to work on, do that impact effort prioritization. I do that all the time. I have a scale for me that which product will help me in my career moving forward the most. What are some skill sets that I enjoy doing? And those are the products I want to stick to. Next, as Kinza mentioned, having that conversation with a senior, with your manager, that, hey, I've got 3 projects on my plate, and that's great. I enjoy doing these projects. Sometimes I tone them, but can you help me prioritize? Which one is more important? Can you help me with the deadlines? Because if I don't understand the prioritization, I might be spending more time on a product that does not require that much attention right now. So that is something your manager or whoever is in charge. And if you are in charge of your own clients, let's say they are freelance projects, and I've done a lot of freelance projects, having that conversation even with the client, they will never maybe give you enough time immediately, but just asking the goals and understanding how much time you have for your go-to-market. And then having the same conversation with the other client can help you understand. Second, financial. Which client is helping you make more money? Which project are you enjoying the most? So maybe you can cut down on project and you can start upscaling your price. If again you're a freelancer, I don't know, and I'm just assuming because I've been in that position. Those are some things that have helped me personally. There is no right or wrong answer. It depends on your energy, it depends on the strengths you want to work on, it depends on how much burnt out you are, and do you want to be burnt out, moving forward. But all the best.
Yeah, that's.
Are we doing good on time, Zachary? You have more questions you want to get to, or?
We're good. I mean, we've got a couple more questions that we can ask, or we can switch straight to open mic. It's up to y'all. We have about 45 minutes left in this meeting, unless we want to go over, but we end right at lunch. And after hearing Akhil talk about food and sharing all the food, I'm kind of not trying to push that off anymore.
Yeah, let's why don't we go into I'll take the crack at the next question. We want to keep moving here then.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
But those are all, those were all very good insights from everyone on the, and I agree with everybody. Context switching is bad, and you should really have one-on-ones with your manager to make sure that they can realistically assign things to you. And context switching there is site posted in the room as well. Carnegie Mellon has a blog about it, but there's stuff around science of context switching and lost productivity that you should definitely check out and present to your bosses to say, hey, you're actually making this worse by giving me more work, and I need to focus on one thing at a time. So I agree with all that.
And I think maybe the next question kind of springboards into this pretty well. The next question has to do with coding and needing to have knowledge and backgrounds in coding. We see a lot of job listings that ask, must have knowledge of C+, or must know Python, or must know Java, or CSS, or whatever. Whenever we're looking at UX postings, how important is it to actually have that background in coding? And is there a certain minimal threshold that you recommend someone have? I guess, Matt, since you have the mic, you can go ahead and start.
Yeah, and I'm also a former engineer too, so probably better position for this. I'd say none, first of all, because it's designer, not developer. Those are two different jobs. So like straight up, like those are two completely different. It's literally left brain, right brain. If you have a really good developer and a really good designer and you pair them together, they will crush anything that's in front of them. If you're asking your designer to go directly into production code and make changes, that's a huge red flag. Don't work for that company, right? Because it's just going to cause a lot more problems. They're not compartmentalizing different aspects of the discipline. So that said, you should be familiar, which is I think the word that a lot of people familiarity with X, right? So that just means like, okay, I understand there's different types of JavaScript. There's React, there's Vue, there's Angular, right? And having a sense or an understanding of what those technologies are technically capable of allowing you to do from a design aspect is certainly something to know. But if a company is saying like, no, you need to be able to design and write code, yeah, that's complete. I think that's completely unrealistic. On top of the fact that Gen AI in, let's say, the next 2 years will completely, like, being able to code in 2 to 3 years with Gen AI will be the same thing as, and I'm dating myself here, when I used to put competency with Microsoft Office on my resume. Like, that used to be a real thing. Everybody today would just laugh at that because everybody knows how to use Office. But back in the day, nobody knew word processing and things like that. So you put it on your resume, but over time, right, it's going to be the same thing for coding. Coding is going to be, I'm just going to ask the Gen AI to write something for me, and then I'll paste it in or have it help me Copilot, GitHub's Copilot program or application that they have, right? That need to have to really understand the code over the next couple of years will continue to dissipate, and really being able to focus on the human factors aspect, which is what designers do, is to become even more important, because the AI is going to need to know what it needs to build, and it's going to get that information from people like us.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Akhil, anything Ed?
I was dancing because he literally said my degree name. My master's is in human factors and ergonomics. So like you say, and I study human automation teaming and human AI teaming. So like you literally just said what I study for a living. So next, I wish I could like send that clip to my parents and be like, yo, this is what I actually study. Someone knows what it is. But anyways, no, yeah, completely agree with what Matt said. I think if a company is asking you to know coding knowledge, should a coding, like how to code, like actual tactile functionality of coding, it's a huge red flag, because yeah, left brain, right brain syndrome, in that two separate entities, but when you put them together, they should work really well, right? But I do recommend that at some baseline level, you should have a fundamental understanding of the tasks that developers do, because that really goes into, this may be me turning on my research brain, but that's really into going into understand like scalability and the idea of your research and actual like tactile findings, and how to produce really good work for other team members to use. So having like a functional understanding of just like some baseline terminology would be really good. And there are thousands of resources nowadays to go get that information. But yeah, actual skill of coding, sure, does it help? Sure, but is it required? No, and it should not be required for a designer or a researcher to know how to. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much. Kinza, Pragya?
Yeah, so absolutely not required. But again, like they said, it's beneficial to have that fundamental knowledge, that functional knowledge, only because sometimes it helps to have those conversations with your client sometimes. So they don't have to get technical at all, but before you recommend a functionality or a feature to a client, you need to have those conversations with your developer, or you need to have that knowledge to see, okay, is this even possible right now? Sometimes there are just limitations pertaining to the budget. You don't want to put in extra hours on something that, you know, could use a lot of time, and you need a better solution. And those are conversations that maybe you need to have with the developer. And sometimes if you have that back pocket knowledge, you can have them yourself. But, and in any case, they're not required. And we talked about maturity for the workplace you're at. Like, in an ideal situation, they would be a different person.
Absolutely. And I don't have anything else to add. That just want to, say it is not required. I've never coded myself, and Matt, Akhil, Kinza, they all just stated the same thing. It does help to have conversation with the developers. Again, you don't really need to know to code, but sometimes those lingo, like if the developer is saying, padding, maybe you need to understand the word padding. And that is something you learn on the job in terms of feasibility. Just have that regular collaboration with the developer when you're showing your design to the product manager. Maybe also include the developer, the front end, the tech lead in those conversations, just so that they can think about the feasibility aspect while you are thinking about the design aspect. It helps to have a good understanding of designer-developer handoff and just being good friends or, in a good collaborative spirit with your developer so that they can reach out to you rather than they start building something based on their understanding. That's it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Last question that we'll take from the pre-select questions, and we'll kind of open it up for open mic. This is kind of really the big one, and I've seen all of y'all's portfolios, and I know that they're great, so y'all are great people to ask about this. What needs to be in your portfolio in order to break into the field? Does it have to be specifically only UX stuff? Can you include other things in there? And what really do you need to have in your portfolio to set yourself apart from other applicants? And let's go Kenya, Pragya, Akhil, and Matt. Kinza, I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that.
Okay, we kind of already touched on this, but basically, like we said, no experience is discounted. But then at the same time, you need to have impactful pieces in your portfolio. Don't just add anything and everything that you've worked on in the last 5 years, or every single project that you worked on in every single class during college. Like, all of that doesn't have to be in your portfolio. Sometimes it helps to have your portfolio compartmentalized, and depending on who you're applying for, you send them those specific things. I got to a point once where this can take a little bit of extra time or energy, but I would sometimes just send out, instead of sending them my entire portfolio, I would send out a link to a specific page if I knew that was more relevant. Or if I was applying for something very specific that I knew could use some piecemealing, I could create an entire landing page and send them that landing page. I know that takes a little bit of extra effort. You don't have to do that. Absolutely not. I was being extra. You don't have to do that. But know what your employer is looking for. I know that every time you apply to a different job, you do, however, tweak your resume a little bit for the specific keywords that they're looking for, or you rephrase your responsibilities a little bit differently, just so they're more relevant to wherever you're applying to right now. And it's important to do that. It really is. I think based on, and this all depends on, again, your goals and which job it is that you are applying for. But I wouldn't discount any UX experience that you might have had that can add to a conversation. Sometimes some pieces are just conversations, and you need to identify those in your portfolio. Sometimes I didn't directly work with something that was UX related, but I knew that that was a big client that I had, or I knew that gives me some kind of prestige value kind of factor that I can talk about. So, everything has its own value and worth. I would say keep those things in mind, but be very intentional about what you're showing to a prospective employer. Sometimes in an interview, you can talk about those specifics. It doesn't have to be that you have to filter all of those out in the very first stage, but in the interview, you can give them a little bit of extra attention. I don't know. That was the question, right?
Yeah, I think you did a great job.
I think I pivoted.
That's okay.
It's all related. So important pieces of portfolio, and if you should have things outside of UX in your portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it okay to include things that are outside of UX? What needs to be in there, and what really kind of sets you apart from other applicants?
So I see a portfolio has 3 important things. One is your homepage, that is the landing page. Second is your case studies, and third is your about section. I would say second and third are equally important. That people tend to forget the about section now. If companies are looking to hire somebody, yes, they're looking for that skill set, but they're also looking to see that will you add value to the team? Will you be fun to work with? What kind of a personality you bring in? Each person has a unique individual personality. So that covers the about section. In terms of homepage, empathize with your end users now. That's something I did. Who are your end users again? Recruiters, hiring managers. They have to go through so many portfolios every single day. So what can you do to stand out? What's your unique perspective? That is your elevator pitch. So homepage is very, very important. Add your personality. It doesn't have to be super animated and very different, right? But what's your strength? What's your personality? What are those keywords that we were talking about? Maybe you do not have UX experience, but maybe you have experience in a particular domain. So call it out. You have maybe 3 years of healthcare domain experience. So that is a huge keyword. Maybe you're high on research. That's second keyword, right on top. So you're making it very easy for your end user, that is again the recruiter or the hiring manager, to understand in those 20 seconds, okay, I want to read more about this person. This person seems to have 20% or 40% of the things that I'm looking for in the job description, and they will understand more once they start reading your portfolio. So that's important in terms of having other pieces. Now, I come from an architecture background, so I did add my residential and interior design projects, just a few snippets, just to show that I do understand design principles. So if there is anything you can take from your background, do add it in your portfolio, like Kinza mentioned. If not, keep it away. If it's transferable. Again, one thing I highly advise is any recommendations, if you do not have the experience, especially, do you have LinkedIn recommendations? Do you have a manager in your previous company or somebody you work with who really liked your job? Put it out in front. So basically acting, your portfolio homepage as your landing page. Portfolios, I cannot stress this enough, and Matt has spoken about it. Bootcamp portfolios do tend to be very process oriented. In real life, understand that most designers, we do not follow all this process. I'm pretty sure all of us can, pass that. Budget constraints, not all the products need all of those design phases. So think about that. What are the highlights? Make your portfolio super, super scalable. More images, as less text as possible. Look at other people's portfolios. When you were looking at other people's portfolios, how much text did you read? Or what are some patterns that inspired you to read more in a portfolio? Take that in your own portfolio. Just some things, I don't know. I probably deviated too, but this is a topic I really like.
We could have a whole nother discussion on portfolios if we wanted to. Maybe we'll make that next month. Next month is Christmas, we're not doing that. Akhil, what do you got?
So for research portfolios, it's a little bit different. So I can highlight for anybody who's interested in a research portfolio. I'll talk about like what I think you should traditionally include, and then what I believe. Traditionally, especially if you're early career pivoting, just show that you understand how to structure processes, because research is not about the findings you get. If I'm being honest, sometimes the findings that you get are obsolete, but it's about the process of doing the research and knowing that you understand the tactile functionalities of how to navigate research and navigate really step-by-step processes in a thorough manner. And you can illustrate this through a variety of ways, whether you were handling customer service. So I brought up the education background. I have some friends who are UX researchers, and they come from a background in zoology. So like really different backgrounds, but they illustrated really well how they handle step-by-step methodology and show that they know how to handle like creating, constructing, and really like thinking about things in a creative manner. Now, for me in my portfolios, that's what you traditionally include. For me, I'm all about personality, because I think that for a researcher, 70% of the battle is just like being good to work with. You can teach anybody how to do proper research, in my opinion, but having like a good personality is really hard to teach. That's why, like, if anybody looks at my portfolio, which is a work in progress because I'm like retooling the whole thing, but like when you land on my portfolio, the thing that welcomes you is like my favorite Pokemon, and then like everything, there's like GIFs and memes littered throughout of it, because that's like kind of me as a person and I don't shy away from it. And if you go to my About Me page, it has like a GIF of my favorite animal, has like a Miyazaki film because I'm really into anime and art and like streetwear culture. I have a lot of that. So really finding that really happy blend and showing your personality, like don't be afraid to do so, because that's often staying away from like more about the career stuff, but like from your job search, that's often sometimes can be the predicator between you getting hired or not, is like being a good person to work with and having a really interesting personality. Like a quick side tangent is if I just helped a mentee of mine get a job, and she said that the reason that they interviewed her was actually because she mentioned on her resume, she works at an aviation company, that she is what did she say verbatim? She was like enthusiastic plane geek on like the top of her resume and the top of her portfolio, and that was the conversation for 30 minutes. So yeah, those are like my two takes, is that personality, showing that you know how to construct like a clear, concise protocol and really follow directions, follow orders, and also think about things in a creative manner, and really showing your personality.
Portfolios are always a work in progress, period. As a designer.
Yeah, mine is yeah, mine is a work in progress right now. It's still being retooled because like moving a stage in my career, I need to tool some things.
Yeah, awesome. Who knew that the thing that sets you apart on your portfolio is you, right? Matt, you got anything to add?
No, what everybody talked about is good, but let's see. Yeah, you're constantly. I literally was just updating something on it now that I noticed that I didn't like. I'm constantly changing my portfolio, or just little tweaks here and there, but that's more perfectionism than anything, probably. I would say when I'm hiring, looking at people and stuff, or when I was hiring, I should say, just explain how your brain works, right? Ev Williams, he founded Medium and Twitter, probably a bunch of other companies now at this point. He said the only thing I really need to identify in a designer is their passion and their sense of empathy, right? And I could teach them everything else. So I don't think it's about, oh, I can regurgitate design thinking, those steps. I can, here's how I can use Figma. Like, that's not what real design is. Real design is building empathy, having compassion for your users and your team, and then demonstrating that thinking without really needing any of those tools. So that's why, a lot of like sketches on napkins or whiteboard drawings, those kinds of things are much more interesting to hiring managers, because they give you insight into how your brain thinks, right? And whether or not your approach or your experience lends to the problem I may be currently focusing on. I will also second the about section. Yeah, you want to. Everybody kind of looks the same. They got it, but if you can in the about section do something to either talk about your prior career you pivoted from, or just something that makes you unique or you. I think that's also something you should lean into to increase your uniqueness, stand out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. That's really great. Okay, cool. So that ends kind of a pre-selected question time. I do want to make sure we leave plenty of time for kind of open mic to get you all's thoughts. I have a chat moderator somewhere who's hopefully been pulling some questions for us from online, if there are any. So let's go ahead and open up the
chat. And should I go with the first question?
Yeah, if you've got one ready to go, let's go.
Yeah, this is an important one because I wanted to make sure that we cover this part. How do we talk about our salaries, remuneration, compensation? How do we talk about what is the right way of knowing about your experience and your skill set and negotiating that with the employer in a safe way? And second part to this is as about 80% of the audience is ladies and industry, sometimes ladies do not get the same remuneration as men. What are your thoughts about that? And Matt, since you are a hiring manager, how do you take care of that? Sorry. So this is a question I would like to know what each of the panelists think about, and please add your thoughts on Matt, when you hire someone, how do you make sure that it is not the partial one that we put them on?
Did y'all hear that okay online?
No, can you ask that question, or can you repeat what she said? Sorry.
I think what she's asking, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Tanvir, she's wanting to get some insight on how to have those complicated conversations when you're in the HR room, when you're in their interview room, talking about salary rates, talking about job responsibilities and things like that. What's the best way to approach those types of conversations? And then there was another question kind of about how there's a discrepancy in the workforce between male and female workers, and how does a hiring manager approach that specifically? Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're two very different questions.
Yeah, and Matt, we wanted your experience as a hiring manager.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So to think to the, I'm not going to speak to the second question. Y'all can speak to that better than I can. But to the first one around like how are you supposed to have these conversations around salary and things like that. First of all, it's not easy. So just accept that it's uncomfortable for even someone like me to talk about. But I think looking and seeing, it's really hard too, because like, is it a remote job? Is it a local job? Localization of what region you're in has an effect on what salary band you're available for, right? So that can affect a lot of things. Austin and Houston, I think Texas overall is pretty strong salary wise. But take a look and see, what are other companies for similar role titles? What are they paying, or what are they offering to pay? I don't think Texas has a law where they have to list the salary range. I don't think, right? So, but if the company does list that, that's always useful to go on to get a sense of like, what's the lower high end that they're willing to pay for it. It really kind of depends. It's a hard conversation to have. You really kind of, let me say this. Okay, I'll give this advice because my partner is a recruiter. She recruits for like back-end engineers though, not designers. But I did learn some of her. Never say the number first. Like never be the first one to say a number. And even if they force you to on the application to say, hey, what is your target salary? And if they allow you to write text, not numbers, put market rate. Like that's what I've been told to put. And market rate, just like you want to do everything to get them to see the number first, right? So if you say market rate and you get on the call, like, hey, I saw you put market rate, what salary are you used to? Then they immediately turn around and they're like, well, what salary range have you been approved to offer for any candidates in this role? Right. Put it back on them to answer. And then they'll be like, we're thinking about this range to this range. And okay, now they've shown their cards. Then you can make a decision of where within that range, like, is that range even appropriate? And where within that range do you feel comfortable? And that's a personal decision that you need to make versus, if you're single or if you have a whole family to take care of, that's something that you're going to have to think about, but definitely always get them to say the number first and then kind of react from that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And then I do think you pointed out a very good point. We do have two expert panelists who could probably speak more to the second part of that question. So if y'all kind of want to approach that, how you approach that misbalance in the workforce. And
honestly, if ever you're going to an interview and before you enter an interview, that research portion where you look at the company's website, always go to their team, always take a look at who they have in, because that will give you an indication on what kind of culture they might foster, realistic. And then like who their leadership is first, and see what that makeup looks like. And if they don't have that on their websites, go to their LinkedIn page, see who their employees are. That can also give you an indication. Definitely look at reviews. Don't forget to go to Glassdoor. Don't forget to go to Indeed. Check their reviews out, see what others are saying about them, and if at all, don't be afraid to ask questions about this in your interview. There is no reason for you to not ask a question if you think you need clarity on something, if you need to feel comfortable. It is the employer's job to make you feel comfortable and welcome. And if they're not doing that, they're not a good fit. Period. They're just not a good fit. I wouldn't even like to test that. There's no reason for them to dilly-dally on that. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. They are hard ones to ask, for sure. But definitely ask them how they approach hiring, or like this exact question, just pose that to them and be like, I need to know like how many people were working on this project, or who worked on this, and what your role was, anything on that nature. Feel free to ask them that. And when it comes to your salary, Matt gave you excellent advice on that. The only thing I would add is, instead of putting down one number, if they really force you to add something to a form, add a range. Because that range will just, it's a range. So you can negotiate something from within that, and never mention that number first.
Yeah, pretty much the same advice here. Research is a big portion to it. What is the salary range the company is offering? Most likely you should be able to get some range on Glassdoor, built in, maybe LinkedIn, if they have posted a range. So doing that homework. Second, understanding your skill set and how much does that suit your lifestyle, right? And most likely, so I've never gone to a second round, at least that's not been my experience, and the other panelists can, talk more about that, without knowing the salary band. First, never give out the band. I have never done it. Some recruiters might ask you, but you can say, you can say things like, first market standard, and second, can you tell me what the company has allocated for this role? Because it's all over the place, right? Sometimes junior, senior, mid-level, it's literally all over the place. So having that research, and second, also understanding once you've gotten that range, go give the interview, but do know there is always a room for negotiation. There's almost always a room for negotiation. So once they've given me that band, and I've done that in the past, I'm like, okay, this isn't my expected range. If that band does align with what the internet is speaking, sometimes they would have noticed that they will give you 20% less than the allocated. In my experience, and I'm like, it's a little lower from in my expected range. Is there a scope for negotiation? And the recruiter would be honest with you that this is the highest we can give right now. Or maybe it depends on the interview. Or they will say, yeah, there is some scope for negotiation on this. So having that conversation right in the start can help you set the stage for yourself for the interview, even without going into the further rounds and getting disappointed later on, right? You were expecting something because it shows in the, but the offer you get is completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. We take a question from there.
I'm negotiating in the level position.
Absolutely, it doesn't hurt to negotiate, in my experience. The worst that will happen is they can say, no, that you cannot, that's the maximum we can, but it always, you at least try.
And you can root that in reasoning as well. Like you said, you do your research, you can say, hey, according to market research, or the market rate is X, and I think I can be compensated a little bit better for this because of my experience in, whatever you have in your portfolio, or however many years of experience you have. So you can always put those proof points for yourself forward when you go into negotiation. So always have those ready.
And I promise I'm not going to try to add too much to this conversation, but as far as the market research goes, Matt brought up earlier that there are some states that are required to list the salary ranges in their job applications. If you are in that, one of those states happens to be California, which has the highest average salary in the country. If you're looking to figure out what is the actual market, look for jobs in your field in California. And then see what they're paying, and then maybe knock a little bit off of that because we don't live in California yet. And then you can take that as your number to look at, because they are legally required to state what they're going to pay employees for that role.
Side note to that, if the company puts like an absurd range, like companies like, fine, we'll put a range, and they put like 80,000 to 600,000, which is what I think Netflix did a listing that was like that or something like that. Then that may tell you something too about the company. Just say.
Yeah.
Akhil,
Akhil, you got something?
Oh, I'm just gonna drop a resource for anyone who is in the research area of UX, if they're UXR. User interview every year, they do a UX salary survey, and they publish a lot of it's very like it's full of anonymity, but it's still a really good resource. It won't say specific companies and it won't say specific roles, but by region and by state and by country and by whether you're a UXR if you work in research ops, they publish this data. I'll drop the link below, but I use that a lot when I was interviewing for roles, to kind of help me figure out like where all my peers stand, where the field stands, things of that nature. It's super helpful. And the other thing to do, this one takes a little bit of courage to do. So I didn't do this until I was at my third spot, but asking, like, let's say you get the offer, woohoo, congratulations, let's give you a round of applause. Asking what your future teammates make may help you guide that direction. Now, there's going to be a lot of difference between seniority, and there's going to be a hiring manager, yes, should make more than a junior per se, but asking the people on your team what they roughly make sometimes does help. And I'll drop that the user interview 2023 data in the chat.
Yeah, that is an awesome resource. I love looking through that thing. It's on LinkedIn too. somewhere. Someone posted it. Let's take a question from in the room. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so throughout today's conversation, and thank you for all of the helpful resources you've all given. I've heard you say a lot about kind of like red flags to look for at companies that kind of indicate your life might be a little more difficult than it needs to be. I'd love to hear some green flags. You mentioned like making sure your hiring manager is somewhat a mentor where you can grow, but what are some other green flags that we can look for to know that a role might actually be a good fit for us, where the company values design and also has like a mature user research team experience?
I love that question.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I was gonna say we don't ever talk about the positive side of stuff. That's good. That's good.
If I may,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think one of the best green flags is, so if you're looking at the company makeup and if you're looking at the team makeup, you're gonna, if you're seeing people specializing, that would be amazing. Because you can tell if, you know, the company is growing at a rate that, you know, is healthy. You can start to see that they are slowly improving their resourcing. You can tell that they've employed more people here and there. So now people can specialize as opposed to, you know, take multiple jobs or wear multiple hats. And I think that's a great indication that they're A, doing well, and then B, they also take care of their employees because they can keep a track of how much, or like how many hours someone is working, or, you know, like they don't have to, like one person doesn't have to do two jobs. So as long as you can see that there are different titles, that's a good indication. The other thing would be always ask about professional development opportunities and how much they invest in their employees, because that is also a good indication that there is that culture of mentorship, of growth, not just in the company, but also of you as a person when it comes to your education, any kind of other professional development, growth. If they're paying attention to that, then you should be able to see it. And then at any point you get to that cultural interview, or, you know, where you get to meet the full team, you can just ask them directly, you know, what are some of their green flags where they work. And I'm pretty sure they can answer those truthfully. And sometimes you start to see trends in what people are saying. What else? I swear I had like 5 other things. I'll come back to that, but if someone else wants to go for it.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and there are lots of ways to figure out the red flags. We can start with the job description. One of the red flags, pet peeves of all the designers here, is entry-level jobs asking for 8 years of experience. That is a huge red flag, right? Asking for 10 years of Figma experience. Was Figma around 10 years back? I don't know. So those kind of, just reading out the job description well enough, asking for understanding of, you know, CSS, HTML, okay, but if you have to code, then I am not sure if it's a designer job anymore. Then going on to the interview, asking the hiring manager some questions as to what are some, if I do join this company, what are some challenges that I will have to, that I can come across in the company, in the team setup, or how do you navigate those challenges? If once they answer, how do you navigate those challenges? What are your suggestions? How does success look like for this role? That could be a good conversation, because a hiring manager might, again, that falls onto the development part of, you know, as a designer, if you're joining a company, how do you develop in the role? And that success, how does success matter question can help you understand that, okay, they're looking for something, and you might be into a senior position, you might get into a lead position, leadership position, whatsoever. Another question to ask, and that is something I personally ask, is what does the first 6 months look like? In an interview, in a hiring manager round, and a mature company, or, you know, a good mature company, good hiring manager would be maybe not have 100% answer to it, but will be able to answer confidently. And this question can help you understand, even if there are some uncertainties in the interview. If you're doing a portfolio round, let's say, and they're asking you only questions, and you're you have applied for UX designer role and they're asking you only questions about your color theory or your visual aspects. I mean, that could be a red flag, or maybe you can start to understand that maybe the team hiring or the company hiring does not understand UX design. Now, and that could be okay for somebody starting out, if that is, but that's an opportunity for you to understand, hey, I've done this, but this has been my thought process. And gauge if they are ready to accept that change, if you are bringing that change, if you join that company. These are some things, what else? I know
There's a lot.
This is a huge conversation, I know.
Another thing I can add is, always identify and ask who your direct, report might be, and then get to know them as a person. So in your interviews, once you identify who they are, ask them direct questions on, you know, like how they like to manage and what their managing style might be. And definitely ask what growth looks like for your role and your title. And then see that through the people who already work there. So if you see that your boss is X title and then their boss is another title, always ask them what your trajectory looks like at the same time. Because that can help you tell if they've thought about you from that perspective, from a growth perspective. Because a lot of the times people will say, we're hiring for the long term, but they've never thought about the long term themselves. So it's nice to see what they've envisioned for you and if that aligns with what you want yourself to grow into. So it's important to have that alignment at the same time.
Looking at the company page can also help you gauge how much they invest in design, if they're spotlighting other designers, what has their experiences, the designer's experiences been across, if they do post on LinkedIn, or maybe connect with the designer and have a coffee chat.
Yeah, that's awesome. Matt, you got any green flags you want to throw in there right quick?